Brian, we just heard from some of the leaders of the largest corporations, global corporations, many of them as well. And we seem to have at least gotten a sense from some that they're more positive outlook in terms of where this goes. What do you think?
I remain concerned. I think it's the biggest policy concern going into 2019. It's something we highlighted a year ago, going into 2018, and I don't think a lot has changed between then and now. So I understand some of the optimistic view that some of the business leaders are trying to put out, but I don't share it. I think we're in for a rough patch of headlines coming out of Washington, not just on the China front, but here in North America too. I think there's a lot of uncertainty about the future of the newly reached USMCA that's supposed to replace NAFTA, and how that is going to proceed in a new Congress. So I think there are a lot of risks on the trade front.
All right, we can talk about the new NAFTA in a minute. Give me your sense as to why you're not more optimistic on the prospect of a resolution in some fashion of the tensions between China and the U.S.
I think it's strategy. I think China is playing a longer game, while the U.S., because of U.S. Political and electoral factors, is playing a shorter-term game. And so I don't know that it's as much in China's interest to reach an agreement as the U.S. wanting to get to an agreement. And the president is in a tough spot because he's going to want to trumpet something going into 2020. Trade and immigration were two of his biggest platforms. I'm not convinced that China is going to give him what he wants.
Brian, we just had Larry Kudlow on a moment ago, said he does not think, at least for now, that the Huawei news bleeds into trade talks. But you look at Chinese state media, they call the arrest a despicable rogues approach. How can those two things remain separate?
Yeah, I don't see how you can separate them. I think they are linked, for better or for worse. So yeah, I think the arrest is going to bleed into the trade talks. If you look at it from the Chinese perspective, this is a major development for them, in my view. And so I think they will link the two. We may not want to link the two, but I think from the Chinese perspective, they are linked.
Do you think they retaliate in similar fashion somehow? I mean, it sounds ridiculous. We've been asking people if executives should be nervous about traveling to China. Kudlow said no, but should they?
I think China does have to tread carefully on this. They want foreign investment. They want foreign customers. Obviously, they have been heavily criticized for intellectual property theft for several decades now, and so. To add on to that problem of arresting foreign nationals and foreign businessmen would put them in a tougher spot. I think my own personal view is that the administration would be better served by getting some of our allies on board in our negotiations with China. I think it's been too bilateral, one-on-one. I think a multilateral approach would be better, and I think it would insulate the West and European countries as they deal with China, give them a little bit more leverage going into the talks.
Brian, the USMCA, I know Pelosi, I think, met with Lighthizer, and there certainly seems to be, and I think you believe this as well, some question as to whether it will be approved. A, do you believe it will be? And if not, is there really a chance he's going to repeal, that is Trump, NAFTA, which would leave us sort of in a no man's land?
Let me take those in reverse order, David. I think there's a big question in Washington of whether the president has the authority to unilaterally withdraw the United States from NAFTA. I believe he does. And if he doesn't get his way on USMCA, I think he has boxed himself into a corner. I don't know what the exit strategy is if he doesn't get USMCA approved. What do you do with NAFTA at that point? You've threatened to get out. Can he kick the can down the road and buy himself some time? Possibly, but he's in a very difficult position. At this point, I am actually fairly bearish on the outlook for the USMCA. I think the Democrats in the House are going to have a difficult time governing, as Republicans did when they came in 2011. There's a split in the Democratic Party among centrists, a lot of whom were elected to those suburban districts that everybody's been talking about, coming out of the midterm elections, those seats were won by more centrist-type Democrats that can win and run and win in those districts versus the hard left of the party. Can Pelosi keep her team together, get enough votes to get a trade deal through the House? Add on the partisan issues with geographic parochial concerns about what it means to a particular business or industry in a representative's district or state. I think people are underestimating how tough it is to get a trade deal across the goal line.
And Brian, real quickly, as we watch the broader markets turn negative after opening or being in positive territory, there is something positive if you're long stocks for a third year of a presidential term, isn't there?
Absolutely. I mean, when you look back across history, the third year of a four-year presidential term is by far the best performing year in the cycle. So I think that and the prospect of divided government, it has proven to be a positive for the markets over time. And so, yeah, I mean, I've painted a fairly negative picture here on some things, but Dave and Carl, I think, fiscal and regulatory policy is in a good place for the markets, especially for financials. History is in a good place. Trade is the one area where I'm most concerned.